Connie Francis has died. Francis recently became a huge hit on TikTok with this song.
Pretty little baby, you say that me.
She passed away quietly, but left behind a storm of money, memories, and mystery. When news of Connie Francis's death broke, the world mourned a music icon, but hidden beneath the tributes and nostalgia was something more. A staggering fortune, a revived fan base, and secrets only her estate truly knew. Was Connie richer than anyone realized? Who inherited her wealth? And how did a song recorded 63 years ago earn millions just weeks before she passed? Today, we're diving into the fortune Connie left behind, the heartbreaks that shaped her legacy, and how her family might be sitting on a goldmine of royalties, real estate, and rarities. A fortune built on vinyl and viral. When Connie Francis took her final bow in July 2025, the headlines were flooded with praise for her musical legacy. But buried beneath the tributes was something just as monumental: her staggering $25 million net worth. And while that figure alone is eye-catching, it barely begins to tell the full story of how one of America's original pop queens built a legacy that continues to earn money even after her passing. Connie's empire wasn't just built on popularity, it was built on persistence, reinvention, and a business acumen few credited her for. Her career spanned over 6 decades, but the bulk of her fortune came from her early hits and the genius way she preserved their value over time. Selling over 200 million records worldwide, she dominated the charts in the 1950s and 60s with songs like Who's Sorry Now, Stupid Cupid, and Everybody's Somebody's Fool. These hits weren't just commercial successes, they became timeless standards that have earned royalties across generations. Every spin on the radio, every needle drop on a vinyl collector's turntable, and every stream on Spotify or Apple Music kept her income flowing long after she left the stage. But Connie didn't just rely on the hits of the past to generate income. She adapted to new platforms and trends in ways few from her era ever dared. Her unexpected digital rebirth on TikTok in early 2025 catapulted her into a cultural resurgence no one could have predicted. The track that triggered this frenzy, Pretty Little Baby, a song she recorded in 1962. For years, it sat tucked in the annals of pop nostalgia. But in a twist of fate, it suddenly went viral on TikTok, used in everything from nostalgic montages to Gen Z dance videos. The result? Over 10 billion views across platforms, making it one of the most unexpected digital comebacks in recent memory. This wasn't just a vanity metric. The viral explosion brought in a tidal wave of new streaming royalties. Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube all reported massive spikes in traffic for the track. At the same time, the song was licensed for advertisements and background tracks in content across social media. This influx of digital cash significantly boosted Connie's estate value in the final months of her life. It was poetic. A woman who had once feared being forgotten in a fast-changing music industry found herself back in the limelight, celebrated by an entirely new generation. I'm flabbergasted and excited about the huge waves my 1962 recording Pretty Little Baby is making all over the world, she reportedly said in a final post before her passing. That moment wasn't just sentimental, it was lucrative. The financial boom from Pretty Little Baby turned her estate into a modern cash machine. For someone who spent her early career fighting for control over her catalog, this resurgence proved the value of owning her masters and maintaining control of her publishing rights through her own label, Conchetta Records. That structure ensured that the profits from every click, stream, and share didn't just vanish into the pockets of corporate labels, it went back to Connie, and now to her family. Yet even with streaming royalties and record sales fueling a massive fortune, there's more to this story. Because part of Connie's wealth didn't come from music at all. It came from a dark chapter in her life, one that changed everything. And that's just scratching the surface, because the next revelation isn't about her music, but about a massive payout from a tragedy, $1 million, that changed everything. The year was 1974, and Connie Francis, once America's sweetheart of pop, was navigating one of the darkest chapters of her life. She had been attacked in her hotel room at the Jericho Turnpike, Howard Johnson's Lodge in New York. The trauma was unspeakable, a devastating moment that nearly shattered her emotionally and professionally. But from that horror came a landmark legal victory, a $2.5 million payout, equivalent to more than $15 million in today's money. It would become a financial turning point that reshaped her life forever. That lawsuit wasn't just about money, it was about accountability. Connie had sued the hotel chain for failing to provide adequate security, and her win marked a bold stand for victims' rights, especially in a time when such victories were rare for women, particularly in the public eye. The payout made headlines, but what many didn't realize was that the money wasn't a windfall for indulgence. It became the lifeline that kept Connie afloat. By 1974, her career had been on rocky ground. The early glory days of the 50s and 60s had faded. The music scene had changed. She was still beloved, but chart dominance had shifted to a new generation. The attack and the emotional collapse that followed left her unable to perform or record. Her career was on pause. Financially, she was vulnerable. That settlement, however, allowed her to stop surviving and start rebuilding. And rebuild she did, with surprising clarity and control. Connie didn't blow the money. Instead, she invested wisely. She bought real estate, including a home in Parkland, Florida, which would later become a valuable piece of her estate. She began collecting memorabilia, everything from vintage costumes to jewelry, that would not only serve as personal artifacts, but would later grow in value. One such piece, a 13-carat emerald ring, became iconic among collectors. Another standout was her Vietnam tour jacket, a reminder of her USO performances and a symbol of her legacy. But perhaps her smartest move was business-oriented. She founded Conchetta Records, a label that gave her ownership of her original recordings and publishing rights. This was a bold step at the time, especially for a female artist. Most musicians from her era never owned their masters, but Connie ensured that when her music played, the money flowed to her, not just the industry middlemen. This decision alone would prove critical decades later, as streaming platforms and licensing opportunities brought new ways to monetize old hits. The settlement money gave her the freedom to say no to bad deals, to build long-term value instead of short-term gain. It was a masterclass in survival, not just emotionally, but financially. Her wealth wasn't just about what she made, it was about what she kept and what she built on top of it. Even more remarkably, Connie didn't disappear into silence. She would speak publicly about the assault years later, using her story to advocate for victims' rights and mental health awareness. Her trauma became the fuel for purpose. She turned private horror into public power, and ultimately into a kind of personal resurrection. She gave voice to those who didn't have one, and she kept singing, even when it hurt. For a time, it looked like Connie might fade away, known more for tragedy than triumph. But the opposite happened. That courtroom victory became the first step in a long journey back to control of her voice, her career, and her destiny. But Connie wasn't done. She turned her pain into power and transformed heartbreak into a second career. Love lost, fortune gained. Behind the glittering fame and million-dollar fortune, Connie Francis's personal life was defined by one recurring theme: heartbreak. Despite the smiles she wore on stage and the love songs she sang with conviction, Connie's romantic life was a series of stumbles, false starts, and shattered dreams. She was married 4 times, but none of those unions brought her lasting peace. The irony, the most enduring love of her life was the one she never got to keep: Bobby Darin. Their story read like a romantic tragedy. Connie and Bobby met in the early days of their careers, both rising stars with ambition to burn. Their chemistry was instant, their connection undeniable. But Connie's father, George Franconero Sr., didn't approve. Fiercely protective and unyielding, he famously drove Bobby away, even threatening him with a gun. The relationship ended, not with closure, but with heartbreak that haunted Connie for decades. In a tearful 2005 interview, she revealed, Bobby was the dream I couldn't hold on to. Despite everything, she kept his love letters, pages of handwritten emotions frozen in time. These letters, filled with passion and longing, are now considered priceless artifacts of a romance that was both real and unfulfilled. Experts estimate they could fetch hundreds of thousands of dollars at auction today. But for Connie, they were never about money. They were about memory, about what could have been. Her 4 marriages told a different story. Her first, to Dick Canellis in 1964, lasted only months. It was followed by brief unions with Izzy Marion, and then Joseph Garzilli, a man she would later adopt a son with, Joseph Garzilli Jr. That marriage ended too, but Joseph Jr. remained the anchor of her later life. Her final marriage to Bob Parkinson barely lasted a year. In her 2017 memoir, Among My Souvenirs, Connie confessed, "I loved everything I had, but love always seemed to slip away from me." Despite the emotional turbulence, Connie never gave up on love. Her heart was fragile, but her spirit was tenacious. She often channeled her heartbreak into her music, giving her love songs an authenticity that fans could feel. Every line she sang came with an undercurrent of lived experience, every sorrow, every goodbye, every dream unfulfilled. Her bond with her son, Joseph Jr., became the most enduring and stabilizing force in her life. While little is known publicly about him, insiders believe he was not only her closest confidant, but also the primary heir to her fortune. As executor of her estate and potential head of Conchetta Records, Joseph Jr. may now control millions in music rights, real estate, and royalties. In one rare quote, he described his mother as a fighter who showed me how to never give up. Connie's romantic losses were deeply personal, but they also had financial ripples. Memorabilia from her past relationship, including those letters from Bobby Darin, have immense auction value. Her jewelry, love tokens, and even items from her former husbands now carry emotional and material weight. They are more than collectibles. They are relics of a woman who lived deeply, loved fiercely, and kept every scar as part of her story. Yet even as her romantic life unfolded in chaos, Connie's relationship with her fans remained steady, unbreakable, and brilliantly strategic. She knew how to pivot, how to adapt, how to make people feel seen, even if her own heart was constantly breaking. But while her love life remained chaotic, Connie's connection with fans and her ability to reinvent herself was pure genius. From 60s charts to TikTok fame. Long before music could be streamed or shared in 15-second clips, Connie Francis was making history. In 1960, she shattered industry norms by becoming the first woman to top the Billboard Hot 100 chart, thanks to her hit Everybody's Somebody's Fool. In an era dominated by male voices, Connie's rise was nothing short of revolutionary. She didn't just break into the boys' club, she owned it. That chart-topping moment was only the beginning. Connie became one of the most successful female artists of the 20th century, not just because of her voice, but because of her bold vision. She recorded music in Italian, Spanish, German, Hebrew, Japanese, and Yiddish, instantly expanding her fan base beyond the United States. Her 1959 album, Connie Francis Sings Italian Favorites, wasn't just a commercial hit, it was a cultural bridge. It connected her to her heritage and made her a symbol of pride for Italian-American families around the country. In the 1960s, she was everywhere. Radio, television, movies. She starred in films like Where the Boys Are and Follow the Boys, becoming not just a singer, but a household name. Yet the real brilliance behind her success was adaptability. She constantly evolved with the industry. When her voice was the main currency, she sang. When acting brought new fame, she embraced it. And decades later, when digital platforms became the new stage, she returned, this time unexpectedly, to the hearts of Gen Z. That resurgence came in 2025, when her 1962 track, Pretty Little Baby, exploded on TikTok. What began as a nostalgic background track for heartfelt edits and transformation videos soon turned into a viral movement. Suddenly, a generation unfamiliar with her golden era fell in love with her sound. The song was featured in over 15 million TikTok videos, racking up more than 10 billion views across platforms. It even re-entered the iTunes Top 5 pop chart, more than 6 decades after its original release. The timing couldn't have been more poetic or more profitable. In her final months, Connie watched her name soar once more, not from a reissue or tribute tour, but from the organic discovery of her art by a whole new audience. She was once again in demand. Streaming services spiked, YouTube analytics exploded, licensing requests surged. The viral sensation turned into a real financial windfall, pushing her streaming royalties to levels few artists from her era could even imagine. Connie's reaction? Humble and joyful. "I recorded that song 63 years ago, and to know that an entire new generation now knows who I am and my music is thrilling for me," she wrote in one of her final public posts. She called the moment flabbergasting, admitting she had to ask what going viral even meant. Her innocence only made the moment more endearing. But make no mistake, it was also savvy. Her estate, armed with the rights to her recordings, capitalized on the renewed popularity. And it wasn't just about royalties. The viral boom revived interest in her documentaries, memoirs, and stage adaptations like Just in Time, a musical that told her love story with Bobby Darin. In 2025, her legacy wasn't just remembered, it was reborn. She had conquered radio, television, film, and now social media. It was a feat that few from her generation could claim. From the smoky lounges of the 1950s to the scroll-happy hands of Gen Z, Connie Francis was still winning hearts. But for all her triumphs, for every chart she topped, language she mastered, and audience she captivated, Connie's story had a darker side too. Because behind the scenes of her public success were private battles that nearly destroyed her. Still, no viral hit or platinum record tells the whole story, because Connie's life was also defined by pain, loss, and ultimate survival. The tragedies that shaped her empire. For all the applause, platinum records, and public adoration, Connie Francis's life was marked by unimaginable pain. Behind her warm voice and glamorous persona was a woman who endured trauma after trauma, any one of which could have silenced her forever. Yet, somehow, she survived, she rebuilt, and she used her pain to carve out not just a legacy, but an empire. The first major rupture came in 1974, when Connie endured a traumatic incident in a hotel room at the Jericho Turnpike, Howard Johnson's lodge. It was a brutal, life-altering event that led to depression, substance struggles, and the eventual collapse of her career momentum. The trauma was so severe that she lost her voice, batir, not figuratively, but literally. For years, she could not sing, and it felt as if the very thing that defined her had been stolen. Doctors later discovered that a nasal surgery, meant to improve her health, had damaged her vocal cords, leaving her unable to perform. From 1974 until 1981, her stage was silent. She called this period the darkest night of my soul. No studio sessions, no tours, no new records. Her absence was so profound that many assumed she had retired. And if that wasn't enough, fate delivered another cruel blow. In 1981, her brother, George Franconero Jr., lost his life in a mafia-related hit. The loss was devastating. George had been her emotional anchor, the one who understood the pressures of fame, the complexities of their family, and the demons she fought in private. His death broke something in her, but also lit a fire. In a 1985 interview, she said, "Losing my brother was unbearable, but I knew he would want me to keep singing." Her comeback began slowly. She battled through depression, substance dependence, and a string of psychiatric misdiagnoses. Between 1982 and 1991, Connie was institutionalized 17 times, often wrongly treated for bipolar disorder. The stigma was crushing, the treatments harrowing. Yet even through those lost years, she kept writing, she kept planning, She refused to let the worst parts of her story become the end of it. And when she returned, it wasn't just with a new voice, it was with a new purpose. Connie became an outspoken advocate for mental health awareness, particularly for veterans and trauma survivors. She used her platform not to hide her past, but to illuminate it, speaking openly at events and fundraisers, eventually becoming a spokesperson for Mental Health America. Her quote from a 2015 charity event still resonates. "If my story can help one person rise after suffering, then everything I've been through was worth it." She also began fighting for victims' rights, often sharing her own story in hopes of empowering other survivors. Her memoirs, Who's Sorry Now, 1984, and Among My Souvenirs, 2017, weren't just tell-alls. They were roadmaps for resilience. She transformed her autobiography into advocacy, building a second career that was every bit as impactful as her first. And throughout all of it, she never lost her business sense. Every tragedy she endured seemed to sharpen her instincts. After reclaiming her vocal ability, she ensured she owned her masters. She secured her catalog through Conchetta Records, invested in physical assets like real estate and memorabilia, and preserved her story in books, interviews, and stage shows. Tragedy may have stolen years from her, but it never stole her will to fight. Her return to the stage was not a victory lap, it was a reclaiming. A woman once silenced by trauma had not only regained her voice, but was using it to speak louder than ever. And just as she reclaimed her voice, she reclaimed control, turning her past into advocacy and her pain into profit. Estate, heirs, and what's next? At the time of her passing, Connie Francis's name wasn't just tied to music history, it was connected to a multifaceted empire. Her estate now represents one of the most valuable and emotionally charged legacies in the history of American pop music. And while her voice has gone silent, the business of Connie Francis is far from over. In fact, it may just be entering its most critical chapter yet. Her estate is a complex fusion of intellectual property, tangible assets, and emotional value. At the center of it lies her music catalog. Hundreds of original recordings spanning decades, many of which she owned outright thanks to her foresight in founding Conchetta Records. Every time a Connie Francis song is streamed, licensed for a film, sampled in a commercial, or used in a social media video, it brings in revenue. Her recent TikTok revival with Pretty Little Baby added millions to that stream, and it's not slowing down anytime soon. Then there's her real estate portfolio, particularly her longtime home in Parkland, Florida. It wasn't just a house, it was a living museum, packed with personal archives, handwritten lyrics, stage costumes, jewelry, and photos that traced the arc of a lifetime in show business. One of the most notable items? A 13-karat emerald ring and a preserved performance jacket from her Vietnam USO tour. Auction houses are already speculating that her estate could bring in millions more should the family decide to open it up to collectors and fans. But for Connie, wealth was never just about accumulation, it was about purpose. Throughout her life, she quietly and consistently donated to causes she believed in. UNICEF, the USO, mental health advocacy. These weren't just names she attached her celebrity to, these were missions shaped by her own experiences. Sources close to the family suggest that a portion of her estate may be earmarked for these very causes, fulfilling her promise to give back long after she was gone. Her adopted son, Joseph Garzili Jr., is widely believed to be the primary heir to this massive estate. Though he's kept a low public profile, those who've spoken about him say he was deeply involved in Connie's later years, supporting her emotionally and helping protect her legacy. As the potential new steward of Conchetta Records, he now faces the challenge of honoring his mother's life work while also navigating the high-stakes world of music licensing, intellectual property management, and legacy preservation. This task isn't just about business, it's about soul. How do you keep the essence of someone like Connie Francis alive in a world that moves so fast? How do you keep her voice ringing, not just in nostalgia, but in relevance, whether through licensing deals for films, stage musicals based on her memoirs, or new documentaries capturing her life and influence. The potential is enormous, but so is the responsibility. Interest has grown among fans, and media producers want to explore the depths of her career and personal struggles in biopics or docuseries. Two memoirs exist: Who's Sorry Now and Among My Souvenirs, thus providing the narrative framework. These stories are not just for entertainment. They give us the chance to reintroduce Connie to audiences who never knew her at the peak of her career, and thus have increased her legacy from vinyls to the digital age. One thing that is clear is that in Connie's estate, the assets are held. Culturally, the estate is a vault, and how the estate is led will certainly determine the next chapter of that vault. If handled well, it could become one of the most successful music estates in the world. If mismanaged, it would be drowned in the background noise of forgotten stars. But one question remains unanswered. What happens to an icon's legacy when she's no longer here to protect it? A legacy worth more than money. Money can build houses, fill bank accounts, and create headlines, but it can't build immortality. That's something Connie Francis understood better than most. Because while she left behind a fortune estimated at $25 million, the true value of her life lies not in her estate, but in the cultural, emotional, and historical legacy she carved into music history. Connie's voice didn't just entertain, it transcended generations. Her songs, filled with heartbreak, longing, and unshakable optimism, weren't frozen in the era they were written. They lived on. And they continue to surface in films, commercials, tribute performances, and more recently, musicals like Just in Time, a production that beautifully reimagined her story, focusing on her lifelong love for Bobby Darin. It brought new audiences to her catalog and gave old fans a reason to remember why they loved her in the first place. But the stage wasn't the only place where Connie's legacy has come alive. Documentary filmmakers, biopic writers, and industry veterans have all turned their attention to her extraordinary life. With two memoirs already in existence, Who's Sorry Now and Among My Souvenirs, the source material for a major motion picture or limited series is ripe for the taking. Her journey is everything producers dream of: early fame, deep tragedy, fierce resilience, and an ending that feels more like a beginning. She was also a blueprint for countless female artists who followed. ABBA's Agnetha Feltskog once described Connie's voice as the model of sincerity and emotion. Long before it was common, Connie sang in multiple languages, took business control of her music, and spoke openly about trauma, mental health, and heartbreak. In a male-dominated industry, she didn't just survive, she excelled. She opened doors that others would walk through decades later. Her ability to connect with people across time and culture wasn't accidental. Connie understood something fundamental. Music isn't just sound, it's memory. Her melodies were woven into weddings, heartbreaks, teenage crushes, and family dinners. Songs like Stupid Cupid, My Heart Has a Mind of Its Own, and Don't Break the Heart That Loves You still hold emotional weight today, especially as they resurface through modern media. The comeback of Pretty Little Baby in 2025 was not a chance occurrence, but a clear indicator of the continued importance of her music for those who weren't even alive when she initially grabbed the charts. Gen Z, devoid of any nostalgia bias, claimed her for their own. Such value says plenty about the staying power of her music. Such relevance does not come out of chance. It is the outcome of real artistry and emotional truth, which will outlive trends. Her own form of generosity has also been manifested. Connie used her platform to touch the lives of many by fighting for veterans, mental health awareness, and children's charities. She didn't just take out a check. She goes, gives speeches, and shows up at events to share her painful past as fuel to lift others. That kind of compassion isn't measured in dollars, but that doesn't deny its great impacts. As she said then in an interview, "Music is how I tell the world I'm still around, no matter how many times life knocks me down." That's just what this legacy continues to do. It becomes a torch for a person who has ever felt broken, misunderstood, or ignored. Even when you dim the spotlight, a life with meaning will keep on echoing. So yes, Connie Francis left behind money, property, and priceless memorabilia. But more importantly, she left behind a message that you can fall and rise again. That love, even if lost, can be sung forever. That your voice, even when silenced, can still be heard in the lives you touch. In the end, her wealth was impressive, but her story? It's priceless. Her songs became time capsules of emotion, echoing through generations, and her resilience stood as a quiet reminder that even in the darkest moments, there's always a way forward. That's the kind of legacy that never fades, no matter how much time passes. Connie Francis gave the world music, memories, and meaning. Now, her legacy lives on, not just in bank accounts or record charts, but in every heart she touched. What's your favorite Connie song? And what surprised you most about her life or fortune? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out the next video for more stories of icons who changed the world and left behind more than anyone imagined.